Hi and welcome to episode 2 of The Previews. I'm your host Ben Kavanagh and I'm currently unemployed. In this week's news, Marvel and Disney announced that Sam Raimi, director of the Evil Dead series and the early 2000s Spider-Man series, will now take over as director of Doctor Strange 2, since Scott Derrickson, who previously directed the first Doctor Strange, has left due to creative differences. This is one of the few times that I actually believe that a director has left due to creative differences. Scott Derrickson has directed some scary films in the past, such as Sinister, and I believe that his creative direction for Doctor Strange 2 may have been just a little bit too scary for what Disney and Marvel were after. Following on from the horror themes, Fede Alvarez, the director of 2016's Don't Breathe and the 2013 remake of Evil Dead, has announced he is in development for a new zombie film. The plot follows a mother on her journey to find her family during the pandemic. Although it may seem a little on the nose, the film will be set early on before the zombie outbreak. So the first 40 minutes may just be a woman sat on her sofa, drinking wine, scrolling through Instagram, and occasionally popping outside to clap for her National Health Service. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of horror, but I know that Alvarez's Don't Breathe was considered one of the scariest films of 2016. So if you're a fan, keep an eye out for this film in the next few years. Some more Marvel news now. Reportedly, John Krasinski, famously Jim from The Office, and the director of A Quiet Place, has been in talks with the head producer over at Marvel, Kevin Feige. Although there's no confirmation on what these talks were about, there has long been rumours that Krasinski has been eyed up for the role of Mr. Fantastic. Now that Disney owned Fox, there's a chance that these old rumours could be true, and we may see the Fantastic Four in the MCU sooner than we think. Other theories on these talks is that Krasinski has been eyed up to direct a Marvel film. With the success of A Quiet Place both critically and at the box office, I think Krasinski would be a great addition to the Marvel directing team. Now it's time for the previews. We were recently treated to some promotional images for the new film Dune. Directed by Denis Villeneuve, the new Dune film will be based on the novels written by Frank Herbert back in 1965. They're widely cited as the best-selling sci-fi novels of all time. This isn't the first time that studios have tried to bring Dune to the big screen, with a TV film back in the early 2000s, and famous director David Lynch even had a crack at it. Unfortunately, this film fell a little bit flat, critically and at the box office.
75% nightmare. And the reason is, I didn't have final cut.
Lynch stated that the studio got more and more involved, leaving him with a lack of creative control. He went as far as to disown the film by taking his case to the Directors Guild of America. He proved to the panel that he was left with no creative control and therefore was granted the pseudonym Alan Smithee to be used in the film as the directing credit. Alan Smithee is a name that has been used since the 1960s, all the way up into the 2000s, for directors who had felt that they'd lost creative control on their projects. They could then use this alter ego without besmirching their name. Fingers crossed they give Villeneuve full creative control without interfering. Studios have a oh my god, I can't believe I've done that again. Currently it's stated the Dune project will be split into 2 films and a TV series coming to HBO. Villeneuve previously directed Arrival and the new Blade Runner 2049. Personally, I love both of these films and I think Villeneuve can definitely deliver on the new Dune project. Another preview we saw this week was the trailer for Tom Hardy's new film, Capone. I know what you're thinking, does Tom Hardy have the range to play a gangster? He's not Ray Winston after all.
Ring any bells?
This interpretation of Capone's life story will in fact follow him after he's left prison after 11 years. By this point in Capone's life, he is suffering from dementia and syphilis, and many believe that he's starting to lose his mind. The plot will focus on his final days and the scheme of an FBI agent who believes Capone has hidden away a large sum of money and intends to retrieve it. If you're interested in yet another Tom Hardy gangster film, then you can find the link to the trailer below. If you thought that Damien Chazelle was done with jazz after directing Whiplash and La La Land, then fortunately you were wrong. Chazelle is one of the executive producers on the new Netflix original series, The Eddy. The Eddy is the name of the Parisian jazz club owned by protagonist Elliot Udo. Udo is a New York pianist who has moved to Paris to set up the club, only to find out that his business partner is now putting the club and Elliot's life in danger. With Chazelle on board, the story is bound to be both romantic and dramatic, with that spark of jazz flowing throughout. Now it's time for the reviews. This week I started watching a new TV show called Devs. Devs is written by, created and directed by Alex Garland, the director of films such as Ex Machina and Annihilation. If you're familiar with Garland's work, then you know he's obsessed with future technology and the dangers that it poses to human life. Devs is a show about a couple, Lily and Sergio, who work at a tech company called Amaya. The first episode of Devs hooks you in with two key plot lines. Both of these mysteries are introduced to us in two different ways. As the audience, we are aware of the answer to the first mystery, but unfortunately the protagonist, Lily, has no idea what's going on. However, Garland introduces a second mystery, a mystery that I believe is going to be the series arc. The other mystery surrounds the secret development that Amaya are working on. This new tech development is obviously quite groundbreaking and in some ways I believe quite shocking. When Sergio finally figures out what the new development code is, he immediately leaves the room and is violently sick. So by the end of the first episode, you're left with two mysteries that have you hooked. Personally, I'm very excited to find out what happens in episode 2, and luckily I won't have to wait much longer, as the full series of Devs is now available on the BBC iPlayer. This past week was the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 13 mission to the moon. As such, I thought it was fitting to watch Ron Howard's Apollo 13, starring Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon and the late Bill Paxton. Only 2 missions after famous Apollo 11, which sent Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the moon, quite a few Americans had given up caring about going back.
Houston, we have a problem.
Though the film is filled with action-packed sequences, the real heart of this movie is the character performances. Ron Howard does a great job of balancing the action-packed sequences and the brilliant character performances from Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon and Bill Paxton, as well as the characters back down on Earth, especially the performance by Kathleen Quinlan, who plays Jim Lovell's wife, the commander of Apollo 13. If you're looking for an action-packed film that's a testament to the bravery of the human spirit, then Apollo 13 is the film for you. And that about wraps it up for this week's episode, but not before Bex's favourite segment, Snack of the Week. And this week's Snack of the Week is a chocolate muffin. Yum. Before I finish, here's the shout out to last week's winner of the trivia question. The question was, what was written on the envelope that Jim gave to Pam in The American Office? The correct answer was, the envelope included a letter from John Krasinski to Jenna Fisher, who both played Jim and Pam, detailing how much he loved working with her on The Office and how much fun they had together. And the person who got that right was Chloe Gilsthorpe. Well done, Chloe, and you win this, an air high five. This week's trivia question is, how many times was the F word used in Reservoir Dogs? Thanks for watching episode 2 of the previews. If there's anything you want me to watch, then let me know. See you next week for episode 3, and remember, like and subscribe. Please.